তুমি একটু দেখো, ফোকাসটা দেখো। আমি একটু দেখাচ্ছি।
স্যার আপনি ভাইয়া একটু দেখেন তো, হ্যাঁ কোন দিকে নাড়ালে এদিকে লকড লক
আমার মনে হয়
হ্যাঁ টেবিলটা পাচ্ছি
না, বোঝা যাচ্ছে এখন মোটামুটি। একটা ঘটনা হতে পারে যে কেউ কেউ হয়তো ওখানে বসে কথা বলতে পারে।
কি স্যার জুম ইন আউট নাই রাইট?
আমার মনে হচ্ছে না, কিন্তু সো ডোন্ট ওয়ারি, মানে এটাই বেস্ট চেয়ার হতে পারে, কিন্তু মনে হয় না।
নাও
চলে গেছে লাইট, চলে গেছে, দিয়ে দাও, লাইট দিয়ে দাও, মানে তুমি সেটা আমাদের
আমি একটু ওদের সাথে কন্ট্যাক্ট করে নিই, দেখি কেউ দেখতে পাচ্ছে কেন।
So it's being set up now. It will be live stream. Okay. ফয়সালের সাথে যোগাযোগ করতে কি এই ব্যাপারে নাকি?
এই ব্যাপারে আমি তো সেট আপ, আমার সাথে যোগাযোগ করা হয়ে গেছে অলরেডি। তো এখন দেখি হ্যাঁ স্যার
যে কোনো করতে চলে যাবে।
হ্যাঁ আমার পাওয়ার কানেকশন আমি এখনই লাগাই দিব, পাওয়ার কানেকশন। আমাকে একটু
আমাদের দিকে মাঝে মাঝে ঘুরে আসলে। হ্যাঁ অফকোর্স, আমাদের ঘুরে। এটা কি একটু বাঁকা হয়ে আছে নাকি এটা জাস্ট বিকজ অফ
এটা এটা হচ্ছে স্যার না ওটা ঠিক আছে, আমি ঘোরাবো হচ্ছে এখান থেকে।
ঠিক আছে,
এটা হচ্ছে আমার লক আনলক, সো দিস ইজ পারফেক্ট।
বাট এটা কি তোমার ই হচ্ছে? আমি চেক করে দেখতে পারি লাইভ স্ট্রিম, মানে তোমার লাইভে গেছে তোমার? এমনি তোমার কি লাইভে গেছে? তাহলে আমি দেখি এটা খুলে, ইউটিউব খুলে। আর সাউন্ডটা হচ্ছে কি তোমার চেক করেছিল? সাউন্ড ইজ এভরিথিং, সাউন্ড ভিডিও ইজ আনঅ্যাভেলেবল বলছে কি?
মাইক ওকে পয়সা আমি দেখতেছি, সাত দেখতে পাই না,
লিঙ্কটা পাঠাতে বলো
না পাবলিক করে দাও এখন, মেক ইট পাবলিক।
হ্যাঁ এখনই পাবলিক করো,
পাবলিক করে দাও, কথা থাকবে।
এই ফয়সাল পাবলিক করো, কথা একবার বললে শুনো, পাবলিক করো।
পাবলিক হয়ে গেছে।
Okay, now it's public. Good.
এটা হচ্ছে চার্জার কানেকশন।
এটা আমি টুইটারে লগ ইন করলাম, একটা অ্যাড্রেস পাঠাচ্ছি।
Is it Karan?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Karan.
Nice to meet you.
Nice.
Well, my name is Aaron. I'm Karan's friend.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, great. Please.
Hello, Rukia.
Hi, hi. Very nice. So much. Don't worry.
টুইটারে ওই টুইটারে
We should do it.
সামনে ইউটিউবে যে দেখো কথা শোনা যাবে
সাউন্ড কি যাচ্ছে?
যাচ্ছে সামনে
শুনতে পাচ্ছেন? আর এটা একটু তাহলে ই করো। দেখেন তো
আমার তো মাইক লাগবে না।
Yes, people will keep coming back, right?
এটা ঠিক করার কোনো উপায় নেই, কারণ হচ্ছে এটা হচ্ছে ইনডোর, তো ইনডোরের গম গম একটু থাকবে। কি বলতে
Rahim, we are going to start.
I think if you close the door,
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to all. And it's actually, I'm really excited that we are having this program here in collaboration with World Bank. I'm really grateful to World Bank, especially Dr. Martin Rama and Dr. Robert. So this is an event. Actually, we dreamed it about for long, but now it has become a reality. We're expecting a few other participants and speakers too. I think they will be coming. So we can start. So let me give you very briefly the kind of background of this event. So SANEM is a leading think tank in South Asia. Actually, we were established in 2007, and this year we celebrated 10 years of our journey. And we have been doing quite a lot of work on regional integration, trade issues, economic growth, SDGs, labor market, and other issues. So one of the niche area of SANEM is that actually we emphasize quite a lot on quantitative research, quantitative economics research. So we want to promote this quantitative research and the evidence-based policy making in South Asia. So we have been doing a lot of activities in South Asia, but this is the first time we are holding this event, this kind of event in North America. And as I said at the beginning, I'm really grateful to World Bank for that. So here in this program, you can see it's actually the theme we have mentioned that South Asia at a development crossroads. So what we felt that there are few challenges in the South Asian countries where we actually need to think and seriously look at and try to find out the major, whether we can find better solutions to these challenges. So in this context, we have 4 sessions in today's event. The first session will look at the growth, the challenges related to growth acceleration and growth maintenance. Then we have a session on trade, especially linking emerging issues on regional integration in South Asia. Then of course the SDGs, which is very overarching kind of linking or having, you can't really ignore or nothing, no issues left out in SDGs. So we'll look at that. And then finally, I think this is something also a bit of excitement to me, that for some of you who are not aware of this, that there is an event we conduct in South Asia. It's called South Asian Economics Students Meet. Actually, this is an undergrad students annual conference. We started in 2004. Few of the leading economics department in South Asia, we started that journey. And actually, it has been now 13th event. We have been able to do it. So what happens, so the students from all the leading South Asian economics department, they come, they meet, present their papers, and then they compete, and then they exchange the ideas. So this is an excellent platform. And actually, again, I'd like to thank World Bank, and they have been very generous in supporting that event for the last few years. So that session, the last session actually will bring some of the SANEM alumni who are actually now pursuing their higher studies or have already finished their higher studies, and now they are actually, a couple of them actually as a faculty in different universities, also doing other, engaged in other activities. So that is the last session. And then actually, with the World Bank, we'd like to, actually the whole idea of this event is not to make kind of very conventional type presentation. Actually, we'd like to, why don't we spend our time and put our effort to brainstorm the kind of cutting edge and emerging issues related to the topic I have mentioned in different sessions. And that will really help us. Actually, we have also come all the way from South Asia to learn from you also, whether, what are the new challenges in the research and what areas we can look at. So this is something we'd really like to see throughout the whole day. And I really, again, thank you all. I know many of you actually come from very long distance, and it has been a wonderful experience. I think when you responded to our request to participate in this event, I'm really grateful to you. So with this, I'd like to invite Dr. Martin Rama to say a few welcome words, and then we'll get into the next session.
Thank you, Selim, and thank you all for coming, for joining this one day of discussions. I'm very pleased to serve as host and to be helping, and we will be very interested throughout the day to listen to your conversations and to learn from you. So we have been interested in doing so for several reasons. One is South Asia is a region where there is a lot of local capacity, local research, and people who are coming and going to universities in advanced countries and elsewhere have a lot to share. As you might have seen in some of you at least, for our biannual publication, South Asia Economic Focus, which is led by Robert, we now liaise with an entire network of researchers in the region to try to understand how people in the region see the issues. We don't want, when it comes to ideas, to have a one-way communication where the World Bank comes and says something and people have to listen. We want to be on the listening side and exchanging views in a candid way with all of you, and that's what we want to do there. But there are also a couple of other reasons why we think this is a very important mission, beyond the analytics itself and the neutral level. So Asia is in some ways a complicated region. It's a fascinating region, but it's a complicated region when it comes to the political economy in the countries. It's a complicated region when it comes to the relationship between them. And our sense is that, of course, at the World Bank we cannot, in light of our agreement, be in the politics of the countries, and certainly not in the politics among them. Neutral players, we work with the government, we listen to civil society, but we're certainly not taking any position. But we think that the dialogue between the people who are the advisors, who will be the advisors, who influence ideas, who are opinion makers, is extremely important. I think the more we help strengthen that technical capacity, that ability to provide to all these political forces that sometimes makes changes difficult, to provide strong, solid, trusted, consistent advice is very important. So in each of the countries, helping in a way, people like all of you have a space, have an opportunity to discuss your ideas is very important. And it is important beyond the countries themselves, to have people who trust each other, despite being from different countries and despite the sometimes complicated and nasty politics between the countries, that can talk to each other and perhaps disagree on identification strategy for a paper, and not disagree on the fundamentals on what development takes, is also very important. So we have been supporting, and we were trying, of course, it requires for us to mobilize funding. It's not always certain that we succeed, but we are trying hard to be able to engage in a long-term way with all these networks, South Asia Economic Students Meet, SANEM, and others, and also to do that in other areas. In a way, this is a group of modelers, policy researchers, and advisors. We do the same, we're doing the same with human development, power sectors, so in other specific areas, so that we can help, if we can build a community that is strong, trust each other across the country, and that we can learn and have stimulated exchanges with you along the way. So I look forward for a great day of discussions that will be throughout the day with you, listening, taking notes, and please engage, please make the most of this opportunity. I always enjoy, I must say, I particularly enjoy the South Asia Economic Students Meet. There is so much energy in those gatherings, and I hope we will have a bit of that flavor here, even if this is a more seasoned crowd in some ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Can we have a quick round of introduction, very briefly? That can actually give us a bit of understanding who are we. So from this table, Rohim, you can introduce very quickly, please.
Hello.
Just press, yes.
This is Rohim. I'm a graduate student, University of Unibig. I'm doing environmental resource and development economics. So I am about to end my degree. So, and I am here to attend that SANEM-North American Discussion Forum, which is a great event. I think we will have it together. Thanks so much.
Oh, hi, my name is Abir. I finished my undergrad and master's from Dhaka University of Economics in 2010. I've been living in Canada for the last 4 years. I finished my MBA with a finance concentration from University of Ottawa 3 years ago, and I've been working as a business banking analyst for TD Bank in Kingston, Ontario.
Hi, I'm Fatima Zuzura. I'm a PhD student in the University of Ottawa. I did my master's and undergrad from Dhaka University. I also worked as a research associate in SANEM.
Hello everyone, my name is Nusrat. I'm a third year PhD student at Carleton University, and I also did my undergrad and my master's from Dhaka University Economics Department.
Hello, my name is Maria Phillip. I'm a program assistant working on the South Asia portfolio at the Center for International Private Enterprise here in DC.
Hi, I'm Muthukumar Ramani. I'm in the Chief Economist Office in South Asia. I work on environment, climate change, and broader sustainable development issues.
Hi, this is Abu Yusuf. I'm an economist by training. I'm teaching in the Department of Development Studies, holding the professor and chairman of the department. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, good morning. This is Maruf. I'm a faculty of the Department of Development Studies, Dhaka University. Thank you.
Good morning everyone. My name is Farooq Subhan. I'm the president of the Bangladesh Enterprise Institute in Dhaka. It's an independent think tank. Earlier I'd served as 35 years as a diplomat in the Foreign Office of Bangladesh. In November 1979, I wrote the concept paper for SARC, and I've been deeply involved with the whole process of regional economic integration now for almost 40 years. So anyone interested in the history of regional economic integration, I'd be happy to chat with you. And why we've made such slow progress.
Hello, I'm Ravi Yakavara from the Trade and Competitiveness Group Practice, South Asia.
Morning, my name is Bogdan Constantinescu, Senior FMS. I'm also acting practice manager for Fili Sissoko this week in financial management, which is is part of the governance cluster.
Hello, I'm Xiao O from the World Bank Global Trade and Competitiveness Practice, especially on South Asia. Personally curious on how to improve the supply chain integration between Chinese investment in that region and the local private sector.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Marcio de la Cruz. I also work in trade and competitiveness at global practice in the bank. Together with Xiao and Mr. Ravi. We're very happy to be here.
Hello everyone, I'm Muthu Mazal. I'm doing my PhD at the University of Virginia in economics. I did my master's from Williams College under Fulbright Scholarship, and I'm a student of Dr. Selim Raihan, and I was one of the participants of the SANEM that we talked about. I participated twice, and I organized in 2009. That was the last time we organized SANEM, South Asian Economic Students Meet in Dhaka. And yeah, we have been thinking about this. We have been talking with Dr. Selim Raihan for a long time, and finally we made it at DC. And it's great to be here and looking forward to a very productive day. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Mirna Mahmood. I am currently a PhD candidate at SUNY Albany. Previously, I did my bachelor's and master's from University of Dhaka. I was direct student Dr. Selim Raihan, and I joined SANEM. It's my first employment, and great to be back to find SANEM again. Looking forward to it.
My name is Abdullah Shibli. Here I'm known as Abdul, simply because when I first came here, they found it easier to pronounce my name that way. But in Bangladesh, I'm known as Shibli. So Salim probably calls me Shibli Bhai, which you do for elders. So I have the honor of being, or have worked with the same institution, graduated from the same institution as Salim. I'm a big fan of Salim. I worked most of my life here. I did my undergrad at Dhaka, great Dhaka University. I'm making a plug for that. Everything I learned in my life in economics. I did my PhD at Boston University in economics, and then moved to the private sector. I am an IT professional, but I never lost my touch with economics. And Salim's SANEM always attracted me because I do a lot of modeling. CGE, when it was being computer general equivalent model, a couple of my friends were very deeply involved. And so modeling is my big passion, even though I know the limitations of modeling, and I critique modeling when people don't use modeling or give it the respect, which is respect its deficiencies and the assumptions and the parameters, and just selling it to policymakers without any caveat. And I want to add, am I a practicing economist? Yes. I write a regular column for the Daily Star, which is Bangladesh #1 English language newspaper, and they are kind enough to publish these in, I'm making a plug for my book. This is volume 1. Essays is, economics is fun, short essays for the masses. Kima Dhaka, the Honorable Finance Minister, Mr. Muhi, was the chief guest. And so one of my two friends, Dr. Hassan Habib Mansour, who is the Executive Director of PRI in Bangladesh, and Dr. Momin, who might be the next Finance Minister, as people say. Next one is coming out next month. If you are in Dhaka, I invite you to the book launch, as they do. They stand there like the picture of the book on your chest. And also I want to make a plug for my organization in Boston. I'm based at Harvard, we have every year 2 or 3 conferences on Bangladesh. I put a brochure there. The last one that we organized just a month ago. I'm sorry I have to make a plug for that. And you might see it's on sustainable development. And we have a great bunch of people who always are fighting for Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you. This table, please. Martin.
I'm Martin Ahmad, Chief Economist for South Asia region in the World Bank, based in Delhi, often around in the week.
Bibi Rokia Saeed. I have my bachelor's degree from Afghanistan, Kabul University. I was season participant in 2014 and 2016.
I'm Ajitam Roy Chaudhary. I'm from India. I teach in one of the leading universities in India, Jadavpur University. It's ranked very highly now. It's a matter of luck that I'm here because I came from something else. And then Salim, who is a good friend of mine for quite a number of years now, he just told me that if I could come. And it's good that I'm at least representing part of India because it's surrounded by Bangladesh. We can have some voice from India too, obviously complementary to each other. That's it for the time.
We are here to support you too. Please.
Hi, this is Maria. I work here at the World Bank headquarters in the education GP. I'll be presenting later today on SG4, which is, I think, the main focus of my work. I also happen to be a SANEM alumni, and also I'm a Fulbright somewhere, so I'm a Fulbright alumni. So looking forward to connect with all of you during the course of this day. Thank you.
Please come.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Karan Kumar. This is part of the 10th South Asian Economic Students Meet in Lahore, Pakistan, representing the Indian delegation. I'm currently a PhD student at Major University, pursuing my PhD in the field of ecological economics, where we consider the economy not isolated to the broader biosphere but embedded in it. Thank you.
My name is Aaron Baltus-Schechter. I'm from New York. I'm here to learn about sustainable development in South Asia. I just graduated with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Economics and Environmental Studies from SUNY Plattsburgh. I look forward to hearing your opinions about sustainable development today.
Robert.
I'm Robert. I'm at the South Asia Office of the Chief Economist here at the World Bank, and I'm the macroeconomist in the team.
Thank you. You just please, you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shiva. I graduated with an economics and political science degree from University of Minnesota, and I'm currently pursuing my master's in public policy from George Washington.
Excellent. And you please.
Hello, once more. It's just joined. I'm from the Chief Economist Office of South Asia.
Thank you all. I think without much ado, we can start the first session. May I request Dr. Robert Kerr, Michael, here, if I pronounce it correctly, please come to make the trigger presentation. Dr. Aditya, please come, panelist. Unfortunately, Dr. Bozgal Khondokar, he couldn't make it. He was supposed to travel from...
Here, otherwise can't see.
Sure, you're most welcome. And also, Dr. Bozgal Khondokar, he couldn't come because he got sick just because of high fever. Dr. Kaji Maruful Islam, please, if you want to come and join here. And I will also request Martin to join the session. So let's hear the, I think it's better to sit over there to see the presentation. Yes. So one more thing, I think we'll adjust the time accordingly. We'll eat up a bit of from the lunchtime. And but as you know, the trigger presentation will be for 50 to 20 minutes, and the panelists will get 8 to 10 minutes, and we'll have at least 30 minutes for opening discussion. I think that is something very, very important. Please go. I'll be the timekeeper, so I'll give you a warning. Robert.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for the opportunity to open the growth session. It's a great pleasure and honor. What I will focus my talk on is the demand to keep focusing on exports in the region. But let's start the growth session with a look at the growth of different regions of the world. And let's take notice that South Asia is now for some time the fastest growing region in the world. And according to the World Bank growth projections, South Asia will consolidate its leadership of global growth. What you see here on the slide is the growth of the different regions for different years. And the line on the top is South Asia. And the second fastest growing region in the world is East Asia and Pacific. But as you see, the gap widens over time. Now, this very strong growth projection for the region builds on strong growth of exports. Exports declined in 2015. They grew only a little last year. They're supposed to grow around 6% this year and then to continue growing around 6% for the years thereafter. Now I will look a little bit into exports and the export sector and some challenges ahead, and I will base this presentation and the analysis of this presentation all on the last South Asia Economic Focus, which, as Martin mentioned before, is our biannual economic update for the region. And as Martin mentioned as well, there is an effort to increasingly build on the views within the region too. We want to learn from the people who are based in the region, living there, growing up there, what's going on. And we built, so we sent out a survey to 200 economists in the region. And we were very happy with the response rate, over 20% responded, so we have 50 responses to build upon. And we use the answers to our survey, and I know that some of you did it, which I'm very grateful for. We used the results in many instances within the report. In my presentation, I just want to show one to motivate a bit the topic of the focus, but also the topic of this talk. We asked 200 economists in the region, what do you expect to happen with US trade policy? And only a tiny fraction, around 10%, expect US trade policy to remain unchanged. 45% expect trade policy to become more protectionist selectively, targeting some countries. In this case, we asked them about Mexico and China. But an equal amount, 45% of the respondents, expect more protectionism across the board, including South Asia. And that, of course, raises the question, should South Asia worry? Should maybe, in light of the globalization backlash and changing global trade policies, should South Asia maybe even stop focusing on export as an engine of growth? And I will argue in my talk that this is not the case. And I will build this first argument on 3 steps. First, one effect we already saw is the stallment of the mega regional trade agreements, TTIP and TPP. But from a South Asian perspective, that's not bad news. None of the South Asian countries was part of these trade agreements. There's a couple of research done within the region, all built on the GTAP model, showing that South Asia would have had negative impact, would have had been negatively impacted by these agreements. They are not coming. That's not too bad for South Asia. Second, in case US trade policies become more protectionist selectively, there may even be some opportunities for South Asia to gain from trade diversion. So the analysis we did here is built on the World Bank linkage model, which is very, very similar to the GTAP model, one of these models you use to study the effect of different tariffs and trade policies. And the simulation we did is, what happens if the US increases the tariffs for imports from China and from Mexico by 10 percentage points? Then obviously, the exports from China and Mexico to the US decline. The US is not producing all that stuff itself, but demand for other countries increases, and we find in this simulation that the exports from South Asian countries to the US increase between 10% for India and 15% for Bangladesh. Now, the extent to which the increased demand from the US translates into additional exports overall depends very much on how elastic the supply in South Asia reacts to this increased demand. It really depends on whether you just export more to the US but less to other countries, or whether you export more overall. But if supply is a bit elastic, then we do find meaningful effects. It can be anything from 0.5% in India with inelastic supply to 3% with elastic supply in Bangladesh. So the second point, if trade policy is more protectionist selectively, there may be gains through trade diversion for South Asia. But what if the trade policy becomes more protectionist across the board? In the survey we found that nearly half of the respondents expect more protectionism across the board. So we used the same model and did another scenario. What happens if the US increases the tariffs by 5 percentage points across the board, including South Asian countries? And what we find is that that is of course bad for South Asian countries like all others. So their exports to the US decline. However, the effect is not very big. So independent of the elasticity of domestic supply, the effect for the overall exports will be less than 1%. Building on these three arguments, there possibly is no reason to focus less on exports. Having that established, let me make two more important points. First, except for India, exports in South Asia are not very diverse. What you see here is a breakdown of the export per sector. The more colors you have, the more diversified you are. India looks pretty diversified. Bangladesh is, over 90% of the exports are in textiles. Now we were interested in a scenario of trade diversion. What could be the beneficial effect of trade diversion? And that is a question that you cannot easily answer with a GTAP model or the linkage model or similar models, because these models use rather broad product categories. So instead, we switched to another methodology, and we used a microeconometric trade model, which has been built and estimated by Kia Nikita, and Ki helped us doing this analysis. She's also the board member. She has a microeconometric trade model with estimated price elasticities for over 6,000 products. So with this, with these estimations, you exactly know if you increase the tariffs from China to the US by 10 percentage points, the price will increase by 10 percentage points. How much will this affect the imports from the US? So then we do the same analysis as before. We increase, same scenario, increase the tariffs by 10 percentage points. And then the crucial question is, as US imports from these countries, China and Mexico fall, who supplies the products? That's a question that now this model cannot really answer anymore, but we can make different assumptions, test different options, and maybe can see something. So we compare three different options. For all of them, we assume that the total US imports remain unchanged. So the US is now not starting to produce that stuff, but just importing from someone else. The first option is the no diversification story. In this scenario, South Asian countries are only exporting more to the US in those product categories, down to 6,000 categories, in which they are already exporting. And we compute the amount of additional exports by keeping the market share of what other countries import. And then we have a different option where we allow for some diversification. So South Asia now is starting to also export new product categories. So if you produce t-shirts made out of cotton, and now you see, and then so far the Chinese make it out of man-made fiber. Now the prices there increase, you're going to go into man-made fiber too. And then the third is strong diversification, where you're really successful in doing this. And what we find is the effects are rather strong. In the no diversification scenario, there really is only a little effect. And that's also a warning thinking about the GTAP simulation. It's not because there they aggregate product categories and then they get an elasticity that promises huge gains. Well, you don't gain if you do not start exporting new products. And if you have some diversification, you're going to benefit more, and the stronger the diversification will be, the more successful it will be, the more you're going to benefit. And in this specific scenario, of course, you're going to be more successful if your export basket mirrors more the one of China and Mexico. And while this now is a story of increasing tariffs from the US to China, the conclusion remains valid more broadly. The same would be true if you think about making benefit of rising wages in China, for example. Now, another thing that the GTAP models are not really good in capturing are growth spillovers. We have growth recovery in advanced countries. The question is, how do they going to spill over to South Asia? in a GTAP model, if you increase US growth by 1 percentage point, there really is a very small effect on other countries. But empirically, we know that the effects are stronger. There has been estimations of growth spillovers from the US to emerging markets, and in general, they're pretty large. So another thing I did for the report, and that's still work in progress a bit, but I will show you one first result, is I replicate a methodology by Al-Manzour and used at the IMF, which is a standard structural vector autoregression model in which you have 10 variables, you have an external block and an internal block, and using this methodology, you really can estimate the effect of the external factors on emerging markets. And we can discuss methodology later. I don't want to bore you with this. But what I want to show you is the average response of South Asian countries. So here, this is what happens if you shock US growth or Euro area growth. How does that affect growth in the South Asian countries? And then I estimated this for 4 countries, for Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And then I did a simple average. And I find this a very nice graph because it shows you that if you have higher growth, there are meaningful effects on South Asian countries. And interestingly, in contrast to many other emerging markets, the effects from the US and from the Euro area are rather similar, which is, of course, because many South Asian countries export a lot to the EU. This result, okay, question?
Can we ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
I think this is finish the presentation, so then you can be more structured.
Okay, I mean, I'm basically at the end of my presentation. This last result shows you that the region stands to gain from the growth recovery in advanced economies, and one way to benefit from this is, of course, by higher export to these countries. That's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I request the panelists to come work here? So please keep the question. Sure. Yeah, definitely be answered. No question will be unanswered before we do this. So, no, I must thank Robert. I think this was an excellent presentation, and I also very much look forward to hearing from the very distinguished panelists. But let me just try to structure the discussion, and I would expect the response from the panelists also. I thought that there are 5 issues which when we talk about challenges of growth acceleration and growth maintenance in South Asia. First is that South Asian countries, actually the growth experience is not uniform. So you have some countries who are really doing well, and some countries are actually lagging behind. So how do we really understand the differences in this growth experience? That's the first point. And what really makes this difference? Actually, there's a very kind of, I used to think that whether we have any kind of South Asian growth model compared to the East Asian model. So, I just put this question. Second one, of course, I think very nicely Robert talked about this macroeconomic issues, and especially looking at the export. But whether there are other macroeconomic challenges, when we want to talk about the growth acceleration, growth maintenance. Third, I think that was also very nicely came out in Robert's presentation, the drivers of growth, especially whether export we know the very neoclassical framework, of course, the factor accumulation and factor productivity. These are kind of very, very important. And then the kind of drivers like export, remittance. These have been two very major drivers in the countries who are doing well, very well. And even some of the countries, even for Nepal, maybe not much is being reflecting the growth, but very much in the poverty alleviation. Remittance is a major factor. But maybe I really love to hear from a person from Nepal. Sergey was here. You were here that whether remittance is it a kind of sustainable model for growth. So that is, and whether we can look for some new set of drivers for growth in South Asia, or which are the new set of drivers. I thought that there would be 2. If we can look at those issues, like of course FDI, and this region is actually very less FDI recipient. So why we are not really being able to tap on those potentials FDI. And second thing, I think that is really Martin's area where he's working on. He's coming up with a new publication on why we're not really being able to utilize the regional integration tool effectively for growth acceleration and growth maintenance. So actually, in one of my work and paper, I really argued that in order to have effective integration, we need growth integration among the South Asian countries. Growth in one country should be a function of growth in other countries, whether we are linked. And we know that which are the factors: value chain, regional value chain, global value chain. These are very important. So this is my third. Fourth one, I think when you talk about growth acceleration, like from one kind of growth path to a higher growth path, and then growth maintenance, like whether we're able to maintain that growth. So I thought that there, the factors are maybe different for determining those two. So you may have certain surge in growth rate, but whether you are able to maintain that growth rate for long, these are the challenges, whether we can differentiate those factors. And very finally, that's why I really love to hear from Dr. Kazi Marful Islam also. When you talk about the deeper determinants of growth, whether we need to go beyond a very conventional understanding of growth, bringing in the institutional issues, both the economic issues, economic institutions and political institutions, and whole ideas of governance and these kind of stuff. So I'd like to hear these things as well. So with these, may I request Dr. Ajitabar, if you can please share some. Please.
So if I can go over there.
Yes, I can help you because I put that folder. So there are two presenters.
Yes.
So these are folders.
Yes. Actually, I thank SANEM and WorldNet for inviting me here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we are.
Actually, Selim has put me in a difficult position because I'm a panelist in the second session also, which is on regional integration. And he himself said that growth and regional integration are related to each other. So if I open my Pandora's box right now, what shall I say in the next session? So I keep something under the sleeves, although I should have discussed this and discussed something else. Now to me, I am not really very competent to talk about all the regions in South Asia. I have worked on India, so I can speak about India. And India is, as you can understand, should be the major driver of this acceleration. Although unfortunately, given the bad regional integration scenario, India is not playing its role. And so the thing is a little different. Let me focus on India. I want to tell you a couple of important things. One is, when we talk about sustainable economic growth, that's very important. And as you know, India did not depend on exports so much. Their dependence on domestic market was far more than exports, although it's picking up lately. But obviously for India, the role of export and the role of export in case of, say, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh is different. So that has to be kept in mind. And the biggest problem which I have, and I will just present it in several tables, sustainability means what? I'm not going into the ecological dimension. I'm going to the other dimension. Suppose you have a categorization of industries. And India, obviously manufacturing has grown, but as we know, services has grown more than manufacturing. But as I will come later, half of the services originate in manufacturing. So if we think that the services hang there as a separate entity, we are wrong. Transportation, accounting, finance, after sales, retail, everything depends on manufacturing. So if the manufacturing grows, the service sector will be given a boost. Otherwise, independently, if we think about the service sector, maybe 50% of the services originate there. So sustainability really means that if we have growing industrial sectors in India, for example, whether that growth in the industrial sector is sustained, so that if we take ranks of industries who are growing fast, the ranks will have a very high rank correlation among each other. Otherwise, you will see that in decades, the ranks are changing very rapidly. If that happens, sustainability is a difficult proposition. One has to really look into
why the ranks are changing so frequently, right? And let me go to this. These are the ranks. This is one of my students is working on that. It will be published soon, but not yet. It's ready completely. These are the ranks of industries, and you can see the ranks as it is. If you look at it, very difficult. They're numbers. But if you go to the rank correlation coefficient, absolutely nothing, except that the rank in 90 to 99 that decade, and the rank in I have up to 2012, but that hasn't changed much. There is a slight correlation, Spearman's rank correlation coefficient on the negative side, significant. So the growth scenario, the pattern of growth of industries over decades have changed drastically. And you might say, that's logical. Things are changing, the demand is changing, so the composition of industries will change. But such a very weak rank correlation is not good. But that's exactly what has happened in research. Now, if we go a little bit more, I think the biggest problem which we have, and any growth, if we talk in terms of, we also do models. We have models and various kinds of models, scenarios, simulations, etc. But the fact remains, and this is true for many of the South Asian countries, we have a large unorganized sector. Think about Bangladesh, think about Nepal, think about Pakistan, think about India. Huge unorganized sector. And these are the data. It's very difficult to get exact data, but these data were compiled by, there's a commission which was set up in India, National Commission for Unorganized Sector. They published this data. And these are old data, 99-2000, but I don't think it has changed much. There is a lot of stability in this kind of data. Now, given this, if you have growth with unorganized sector not in mind, it contributes almost 45% to our GDP and 90% to employment. So growth as such, without delving into this scenario, will create all sorts of problems. And if India is unstable, the whole South Asia region will be unstable. We have to remember that. And given this, again, these data, and this is an index which I borrowed from an article which came out in the ADB and World Scientific. F index is the index of fragmentation. As you know, the Marshallian world of theory of firm is gone. Now the theory is fragmentation. It's a fragmented world, the production is fragmented. Since there is a lot of development in service sector, the whole fragmentation has gone in different stages. And so that giant firm concept is gone. And this is the fragmentation index which shows which industry has more scope for fragmentation. And surprisingly, the L by K ratio, if you look at it, that L by K which they have calculated with this article, which is ADB stuff, was calculated this, you will find surprising things. We think that some of these labor intensive industries is the direct effort. But if you take the whole input output analysis of the national, international dimensions all taken together, services included, then things are different. Some of these industries, for example, metal products, have a lot higher L by K ratio than, say, industries like textile or maybe timber or pulp. So some of the labor intensive industries, food or beverage. I'll finish it. I'm almost done. So why I'm taking the F index? Because this will come again in my regional integration scenario. That's true. Because now if you think about growth with the Marshallian Fermat concept, then we are nowhere. If we take the fragmented world, that concept, and then link the trade theory, not in the Hexian origin, the fragmented world, then we are somewhere in reality. Most of our models are still in Hexian origin framework. And the export-led growth is still in that framework. And we are nowhere really unless we bring in this fragmentation story in the model. Now, what I did, these are very quickly, labor productivity growth, again, TFPG growth, and I have got again a rank correlation analysis. That those industries which have a very rapid growth in TFPG, those industries which have got very high fragmentation index, are these industries related to each other in terms of rank? Or those industries which have got high unorganized sector, are they linked to the export scenario or something like that? Very bad rank correlation, no significance. Insignificant. They are moving in their own dimensions. That's not good for a growth scenario. And India being the biggest partner is disturbing. Job is the biggest problem in our country, and if growth is not linked to jobs, we are in trouble. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rajan. I think that was an excellent presentation. Actually, I thought that there are three major points to cover. Of course, how do you really deal with the services sectors, and how the service sector are linked with the rest of the economy, especially the manufacturing. And you rightly pointed out, if we take out manufacturing, probably 50% of the services sectors will not have much base. So how do you really understand in the context of growth? Second, you talked about the informality. I think it's very important. The unorganized sector, as you define in the context of India, in terms of growth and employment, how the policies, framework, or the policy issues affect informal sector, that is something very important. And thirdly, you talked about the fragmentation and how these are also linked to value chain. And it's a very, very good. Thank you, Dr. Rajendra. May I invite Dr. Martin Rama now, please.
Thank you. Like Dr. Julia preferred to leave anything related to regional integration to the next session, that we can focus more on the growth part. And I would like to make a few comments. And in fact, I want to start from, I'm returning now from a week in China, where we're meeting leading policy think tanks at the city level in Shanghai and Beijing, and also at the national level. And I would say the contrast with South Asia is very interesting. These are two very rapidly growing regions in the world, and there is a similarity when you look at growth rates, and yet what is underlying the growth process is very different. I was also for many years based in Vietnam, and I see similarities with China. When you look at this data, there is a very strong strategic drive, clarity on what is being done, and then an implementation that follows. And it's quite remarkable how a consensus is built on decisions that are pretty big, that in other circumstances, in other contexts, could take a lot of time to really reach a consensus and move. And here you see them charging ahead, anything from the development of Shanghai and Pudong to the way now Beijing is addressing environmental concerns, to the growth strategy, the new sectors. South Asia is not like that, and I want to emphasize that, and in part related also to my opening speech, is that the political economy is much more complex in South Asia, and that has implications for the growth path and the way reforms are conducted. In a way, while you can trace big reform points in East Asia, it's more difficult to find something similar in South Asia, with the exception in the case of India, 1981, the abolition of the Raj. And even that, if you take people like Danny Roderick or Arvind Subramanian, they will argue that you don't see much of a change in the growth rate at that point. There was an acceleration that was happening anyway, and it continued, it was reinforced, but it's not like a before and after. It is not a Deng Xiaoping in China. And so the way South Asia has been growing fast, is a way where reform happens at the margin, and in a very sometimes unplanned ways, where there is a path of less resistance. If you look at the success stories in the region, think of garments in Bangladesh. Many of you are from Bangladesh. The trick there was basically two clever reforms that allowed to bypass the concerns that the regulatory framework was bringing. One was bonded warehouses, so that you could bring the inputs without having to pay customs and duties and get them out. It was like an engineering solution to replace what should have been trade reform that will allow you to bring the inputs. The other was back-to-back letters of credit. It was a way to address financial sector constraint. It was done, it worked very well. It worked in the area of cotton-based garments. There was nothing similar on synthetic fibers, and so Bangladesh is a powerhouse of exports of garments in the cotton sector, and is mainly non-existent the ready-made garment. So it's a kind of reform at the margin and always with a lot of complexity. We are very pleased to see India finally passing the goods and services tax, which is a move towards modern VAT. But the complexity of the process, where we have 4 rates, 4 slabs, plus 0 rate, and all of the discussion has been basically trying to minimize the change, in revenue that the different states will have, because if there were changes, the political equilibrium will be difficult to handle. So we see that makes a difference in the sense that by addressing reforms at the margin, what we see is breakthroughs, but for instance, in sectors where you don't have big vested interests. If you look at what happened in India with the IT industry, it was basically something new where there was not a regulatory framework. Basically, the entrepreneurs there could catch the regulator by surprise, and so this idea that I think applies to the whole region of India grows by night, which is so different from what you see in East Asia, where you see a strategy and something that is implemented. Now, what are the implications of this for the growth of South Asia? I think that there are several implications of this way. One is that probably it will be more difficult for South Asia to reach really the very, very fast growth that we saw in the case of China. Whether South Asia will get to double-digit growth for a relatively extended period of time, I will see it more challenging than in the case of Second, it involves thinking more creatively. If you have these political economic constraints, we are not good as economists when it comes to political economy. We have nice game theory models and all that. Political economy is more complex. But just thinking, what are the innovations that will allow, as was the case in garments in Bangladesh, that will allow with just the stroke of the pen on a clever 2 places all of a sudden unleash something very big. And we see it happening. When these things, when there is a space, it happens. Look at low-cost aviation in India, for instance, or airports. It has been a phenomenal transformation. But it happens, you have to be finding the area. When I think about cities and the contrast with the rise of East Asian cities, where you need really to bring together the investments in sanitation, transportation, zoning, and all that together, and that in South Asia is so difficult. South Asian cities do not have empowered mayors. In some cases, don't even have mayors, so they have multiple mayors for the same city, as in the case of Dhaka. So it's very difficult to have these. And what is innovation we see in South Asia? One that we are starting to study now is we see private cities, which is something that nobody had thought about, although there are a few examples. Here, if you have come from Dallas Airport, you might have seen Reston. Reston is a private city. So there are these places where someone has enough land to have a vested interest in maximizing the agglomeration effects. And so you go to seminars in South Asia and you find these investors say, oh, we don't have a lot of money, we only have $5 billion, but if we get close to an airport or close to a highway, we can get to, you have the Gurgaons and places like that are emerging. So there is something very creative that is happening, but it's happening in these ways that are at the margin and very different from what we see in East Asia. So the first implication I think from that is it will be interesting and we will learn a lot. I think there are things that are, to me, are really innovations on a big scale. What will happen with these private cities? You're getting of Bashundara in the case of those of you from Bangladesh. The positives and the negatives of that, where at some point you have almost a separate governance in some parts of your country. But these are regions that have so much entrepreneurship that maybe there is a prospect of sustaining growth for some time there. Where I see perhaps the bigger risk. So the first risk is you may not get to the double-digit growth that you would like to. So the second risk is that when you create these spaces on the margins, you have very dynamic entrepreneurs in South Asia with a region of phenomenal entrepreneurship that can get the private sector going. But you don't have the equivalent for public goods. There is no entrepreneurship for the public goods at equity, environmental sustainability, where this approach of letting things happen by night will get to them. So I see that as the other drawback for the region, and I think we will have to be willing to pay attention to this. And last point is defense like cross through the region. South Asia is a very special region in the sense that India is disproportionately big in relation to the region compared to any other of the regions we deal with. China in its stage is smaller than India in South Asia. So a lot of what happens in South Asia when we look at the bigger figures is a story that is very much driven by India. But what I would say is that overall, if you take the eastern part of the region, if you take Bangladesh, India, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, you see a path that is sustained growth. It's more confusing in the case of Nepal. Nepal, the growth rate of GDP is not too high. I would say it's remarkably high for a country emerging from a civil war. So I would say Nepal has done much better than many people could have anticipated. Now, if you take the income, not the product, then Nepal has been growing very rapidly, basically because they have been placing people abroad. And one can see it under a negative lens in many ways, but it has many positives. There is skills acquisition, there is sending of flow back. I would say from a gender perspective, it has done wonders. Sending men out is a great thing for gender empowerment. You can tell you for gender empowerment. Where I see it more complicated is on the western part. Afghanistan, especially, and Pakistan are in slow growth. Afghanistan, very slow growth. Pakistan, gradually improving, but still at a relatively low level when you take into account population growth. On a per capita basis, Pakistan is about half the per capita basis of what is happening in the eastern part. And I think there are a few other things that are mattering, in particular security concerns. You see reflected in the investment rate. Well, you have investment rates of 30% of GDP in the eastern part of the region. You have investment rates of 15% or less of GDP in the western part. So that will be my third concern. Again, first concern, may be difficult to get to double-digit rates. Second concern, very important, is this constrained way of reforming will not be good for public goods, equity, environmental sustainability. Third concern, we may have a region that is going at 2 speeds, and that's not very good.
Thank you, Martin. You also talked about, in addition to what you summarized at the end, you talked about very nicely about the institutions and the political perspective. Especially you gave the example of Bangladesh and also India, some kind of very unconventional or not very formal kind of rules-based institutional arrangement, rather than in many cases actually if I can draw from some of my recent work with Lam Pritchett. It is more on the deals-based kind of system, where it's not very. You can't say that actually what happened for ready-made garment sector in Bangladesh, whether you can replicate the same thing for other sectors in Bangladesh. That's a big challenge. Also, probably the same case in India, where what you have done for IT sector, whether you can do the same thing for other sectors. What really makes a difference? So I think that's fantastic. You brought this point very nicely. May I request Dr. Kaji Maruful Islam then to shed some light on these political issues?
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure and honor to be here, to be invited in this very important discussion forum. Let me start with thanking you, Dr. Robert and Professor Aditya Braisholi, and also Martin. In fact, Robert and Aditya, what they have said, that they used kind of economic data. And from one, Robert has explained the situation from international perspective, where Professor Braisholi has focused on India case, and Martin has given us more or less a regional comparative focus on the growth issue. Mine will be more focused on the domestic one. The assumption is that this international trade, exports, and the regional integration will work if certain conditions at the domestic front remain unchanged. So my comments will be sort of an effort to unpack that what are the domestic conditions that can help to sustain the growth. And people like the development is a kind of a transformation which includes like economic, politics, and society. And this transformation is not a linear, and we all know and appreciate that it's a very complex and also non-linear phases. And it has kind of it follows sort of episodes, like growth trajectory for any country. I mean, it just don't follow a very coherent sequence. It has episodes, so it has ups and downs in the country and also in the region. So, having said that, we can identify the three major episodes, like the growth acceleration phase, the growth stagnation phase, and growth collapse phase. In the region and in other parts of the world, we experience that sort of phases in the growth regime. And well, I'll be talking more on Bangladesh experience, not in the region or other parts. So, however, like the theories and our experiences of other countries shows that, and without referring to any particular literature, it's a kind of a summary of the relevant literature, we see that there are conditions like a leadership with a long-term vision is one of the conditions that is important for the growth regime to sustain. And yes, and also a political system that can channel the voices of various interest groups, which includes like workers, peasants, and particularly the middle class, the growing middle class. And the third point is like institutions that can protect basic rights, especially the property rights. And the fourth condition is that a civil society, which is mainly composed of this middle class, and which is supported by a reasonably functional media or freedom of expression. So if these four conditions exist, then you can expect that, and if the other global and international situation remains unchanged, then you can expect a kind of a sustenance of the growth regime. If we look at Bangladesh case in particular, what we see that it's like still you can say that it's in a kind of an acceleration phase. It's growing. Well, I mean it's a little slower than what you can expect, or in compared to other neighbors and in the Eastern Southeast Asian region. It's growing, but still it's not growing at the rate what you can expect. So still it is in that acceleration phase. However, I mean, if you look at the conditions, the domestic conditions, you see a kind of a paradoxical situation. What is that? Like, first, the leadership thing, the first condition. You see the leadership what we have at the moment, and the political leadership, is in many ways, you can say that this leadership has a long-term vision. We have a vision 2021, the current regime, they offer a vision 2021, which is the first time in the history that the political ruling elites, they're talking about long-term vision. And even then they introduced perspective plan, which also includes another 20 years or so, like 2050. So which means the political elites, and even if you look at other contesting political groups like the large opposition party in the country, they are also now offering like Vision 2030. So you see the political leadership is now coming up with some long-term vision. So which is a good condition for growth to sustain. However, the political system, like political system is a kind of a broad term which includes the polity. It's a kind of it's a different situation. Like the majority, like the political system, moving from a kind of a reasonable degree of competition to a closed system. So closed system in the sense that the election, I mean the main one of the main main institutions of this political system. The election is kind of a question. I mean, it is moving from participatory election to a less participatory election, and competition has been very low in the last election, and other material conditions haven't really changed that much, which can tell us that the upcoming election will be competitive or fair. And then another thing is that the monopolization of local political space by the ruling parties, meaning government has introduced a new law that allows the local elections to be held by the party monogram, party emblem. So, which means the political, the partisan movement, so it has gone down all the way to the local level. So the political divide has spread from the national level to the community level. So that means this since we do not have enough institutional checks that can ensure fair election. So this sort of partisan divide all the way down to the grassroots, it basically can create exclusion of the other smaller groups. So the political system in that way is moving from more kind of a closed system. And for the institutions, like, well, if we take the idea of limited access order, I guess it can explain the situation. And in fact, it's a monopoly over economic opportunities, for example, like big business deal, like big government procurement, like jobs, small trades, that have been captured by the ruling party and their party cadres. So, which means, and also, like as I say, like local government, local political space has been made partisan, and also the judiciary is in a kind of a continuous contest and under pressure with the executive branch. That means, and you don't have enough protection from the judiciary. So that means the property rights and the basic rights, it's under kind of a challenge. And this shows a sort of a fragile institutional regime, which could pose a big threat for the growth regime. And the civil society, like it has two roles. Like in the first place, it does provide sort of legitimacy to the ruling elites, and also it can play a role of negotiation between the masses and the elites. So for the growth to sustain, you need a vibrant civil society group, and which is under pressure now because of the law like ICT Act, and which is and particularly it has an Article 57 that curbs the freedom of expression to a large extent. And these are also kind of a repressive. There are other repressive laws. And particularly the local administration, particularly police, government, other state agencies, they are playing a kind of a repressive role for the civil society. So it has a kind of a negative impact. It may have a negative impact on the growth. Yeah, I'm almost done. So yeah, these conditions, well, they haven't developed to a fuller extent, but the symptoms are very much there. So if we don't address them, then I'm not sure if the pace of acceleration of growth, how long it will continue. We have to acknowledge that if we don't really address this political situation, these institutional conditions, then we might be in big trouble. So with that, thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You brought out some very interesting points, especially related to the political, economic, institutional issues and the growth. And probably you did not utter that word, but the democracy is needed for growth. But probably we can discuss these issues. And also very nicely brought out the issues of the limited access order, or even the theories by Mushtaq Khan on the political settlement kind of challenges. And then whether the very new institutional economics, where they talk about very well-defined property rights for a well-defined rules-based system, like Asimov and Robinson, they argue whether they are very much consistent with South Asian economics. So thank you so much. With this, I'd like to open the floor, and I will of course start with Mukta, because he has got his breath for long. Please, Mukta, and then please you can be brief, and then we can select.
My question is to Robert. It's a very, I think it's on your methodology when you were talking about the growth spillover. So I was just wondering, what are the factors you considered in your model? Was it fully driven by the trade between US and the other countries, or we're also thinking about some FDI or any kind of overseas assistance going on? So what are the factors? I was wondering that, because you found a positive result, and also whether there is a very strong variance among the benefits these South Asian countries are getting.
So the first is the way the VAR is set up at the moment. You do control for financing conditions for emerging markets. You control that if the US grows faster, the interest rates there rise, and that often has repercussions to the emerging markets. So you have 10 variables in the VAR, and some of them control for the global conditions, and some control for the country conditions. And if you believe the identification scheme, then what you capture is really a surprising additional growth in the US or the euro area to the growth in South Asia, the Southern countries that have. So because you think you identify growth spillovers, it's probably going to exports. So what I'm working on right now is decomposing GDP. At the moment I have GDP in the model. I want to decompose this into exports and the other components, and then really show that it's exports that is channeling the spillover. The diversity in the South Asian countries is large, and that's partly why I showed you the average, because it looks so much better. But this is also why it's still a work in progress, and I'm working on it to figure out what it is. And it's not that easy to estimate for the region. So for India, you have reasonably good data, and you have a beautiful response. You need to do some approximations of what each people Bangladesh. It's a little bit more difficult. So this work in progress, but I hope I will have nice responses for all the countries.
Excellent. So please, next set of questions, comments. Yes, please.
I'm sorry, Salim, I would defer to anybody else if they have a question, because I think this conference is a great opportunity for students who are just coming up to speed in terms of economics to ask this distinguished panelist. So I'll just ask one question and one comment, and I'm hoping that I don't take too much of the time. With regard to the last panelist, I understand Bangladesh doesn't have democracy 100%, but do we need democracy for growth, sustainable growth? And the reason I say that, I traveled to Washington with Bangladeshi ambassador to a Western European country. I was supposed to fly, but he came along. I said, come on, let's go there. And he is skeptical about democracy. But one thing he did say, if this government or this political party stays for another 10 years, I think we'll do well in terms of SDG. And I was surprised, because it's not the ruling party type of guy. He's actually government. So that's a question. And you see the result for the kind of situation in the USA. I'm not a Republican, but for growth in this country, we need a strong man like him. And I won't name the name person. So that's a question. Now, for the keynote presentation, I was intrigued by one of your curve, last curve, which had elasticity, and I think the growth in development, growth in GDP, or is it growth in export? And would you please give us, because many of us are here also involved in policy, what does that mean for policy for these countries? Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to quickly respond to the last question?
Well, so if I have reached the goal that we're discussing, how to foster exports, then I already reached one of my main goals, namely let's agree on that being very important. And another point I made is, so I don't know whether you are specifically talking about the loss of growth spillovers.
There's a curve where
the growth spillovers.
It's a result from a model, and one of the things I was hoping would give us, okay, what is it telling us? What is telling the policymakers?
Okay.
Should they go for growth in export, or should they go for
So,
diversification?
Thank you for the question. That's important to follow up. So what I did, I replicated kind of a study that has been done for many other countries for South Asia. So I only have these 4 countries. From this, it's hard to make more general statements, but relying on the estimations of such impulse response functions for 25 other emerging markets, and then looking at the characteristics, who are the countries who benefit from higher growth in advanced countries, it's of course those who are more open to trade. So when you have the higher export share, then you're going to benefit more. That also means that in the case of South Asia, probably, the US is going to plus, the Bangladesh is going to benefit more than a country that is exporting less to these 2 countries. So I wanted to use the last month's responses to show that even if trade policies may become more protectionist, there could be bad effects. The growth in advanced economies is recovering, going strong, and they're going to be increased export demand from these countries, from which you can benefit.
If I may add one point. One of the things this report does, in a way, is to get a sense of the magnitude of price effects and income effects. I think with the concern about rising protectionism, we are thinking very much about price effects, tariffs or non-tariff measures that really make it more costly to import from the region. At the same time, we are seeing an acceleration of growth in both US and Europe. And what these results suggest in this analysis is that these income effects are quite strong and can be more important even if the price effects, the negative price effects were to materialize, which is not clear. That the income effect is very important. Why is it very important? Because basically South Asia is an exporter to both Europe and the US. And that makes a very big difference with the States. States economies are much more integrated through China and through value chain to China. So you have, if you're in East Asia, you are selling to a region that is growing very well but decelerating. If you're in South Asia, you're selling to a world that is growing much less but accelerating. And I think that's the point to not to lose focus on the export side. What we hear is a lot of pessimism, say, okay, we have large domestic markets, forget about exports. And we know that there are many spillovers that go beyond the spillovers that you capture in a large model of the stack in terms of learning, in terms of standards that are associated with exports. So that was the point that I thought was
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Well, it's a very open question, and the answer is yes and no, like whether democracy is needed for sustainable growth. All I want to say is that, like, for the acceleration phase, perhaps, different histories and trajectories of different countries shows not big difference between democracy and autocracy. So, however, to sustain, growth to sustain, you see the political stability is an important variable that needs to be there in place. And if you have a population, and if you have a growth without job, and there is a huge number of growing youth population, and if the civil society cannot provide the legitimacy to the ruling elites, meaning the policy regimes, and also if there is kind of no check on the capture of economic opportunities by the particular, then there might be a high likelihood to have a huge political instability. Particularly if you look at the history of Bangladesh, then we have phases of political uprise movement. So that can pose a big threat to this growth regime. So you have to have some institutions in place to ventilate, to voice these groups, and also kind of at least, if not very fair, but to reasonable degree of competition for the economic opportunities. If it is not in place, then then the growth regime would be in danger, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to add one thing, what Maruf was mentioning, one of the recent work of mine with Manchester University School, Dr. Kunal Sen and the Indian economist Sobhashaji Kaur, actually, we did a large quantity study looking at 125 countries, their growth phases over the last 60 years, try to understand transition over the growth, and using a kind of multinomial logic model, try to understand what institutional factors affect the growth phases, transition from one phase to another phase. So the interesting finding was that democracy or the political institutions of democracy, it really matters countries preventing from growth collapse. But it doesn't really matter much when it comes to the country is actually in the acceleration phase. So when you really want to go for a rapid acceleration or rapid growth, maybe the institutions of the democracy didn't matter much, but more of the economic institutions which matter. Anyway, so please, any other question or comments, please?
Thanks. On this topic of growth, and also to pick up on a point that Dr. Rama mentioned earlier on the risk of having South Asia region with two speeds when it comes to growth. I moved recently from Europe and Central Asia, where I spent many years in the country. And probably most of you know that in the European Union, for the past couple of years, there was a big debate about this two-speed Europe. And in that case, it didn't really focus only on growth. So I wonder if we should look a bit wider, considering the other aspects, regional integration, beyond growth, governance, immigration, a lot of other aspects that are relevant to both regions. And while I agree that the two regions are not easily comparable, but I think there are lessons to be shared. And I wonder, what's your take on what lessons could be learned, for example, from Europe that would be relevant to South Asia?
I think that your question on Europe and South Asia raises issues of regional integration that I think will be addressed more in the next session. But I think understanding why we're seeing a two-speed South Asia in terms of growth is important, and it may not be necessarily related to institutions. There was a time when Pakistan, for a long time, was growing faster than India. So I don't think it's the fundamental institutions, but my sense is that the political economy and the blockages that have been created are quite important. I guess the challenge will be to see whether, in particular with the China-Pakistan economic corridor, whether Pakistan is able to regain more dynamism, the kind of openness that you don't get through policy, the kind of openness that you're not getting through tariff reforms, and you have all these mechanisms to really protect incumbents and that affecting, undermining the overall competitiveness of Pakistan, whether an economic corridor will be a decent substitute for a policy change in the sense of bringing competition and bringing this kind of movement. I think that, but at present I see that as the main possibility for change in speed in Pakistan. is more complex in the case of Afghanistan. Afghanistan has a turbulent history. It had a remarkable period of growth, but under very exceptional circumstances, because the country was getting the security with help from abroad and was getting roughly 43% of GDP inflows coming in different ways. And of course, you can get a lot of growth, but it's not sustainable for a long period of time. So I think there is more uncertainty in the case of
Thank you. I would like to just raise a few things, I think, based on the discussion we have so far, especially the countries in South Asia that have different experiences as well as they are facing different challenges as well. For example, though the title of this session is Growth Acceleration, Growth Maintenance, we are not actually talking about the quality of growth. This is also very important. Especially India, probably Professor Rajchandran can talk a bit on the kind of jobless growth phenomenon, which is being very, the alarm has been raised. Also in recent time in Bangladesh as well, very recent data of labor force survey shows that though the country is actually growing over 7%, last few years, but it's not really creating that much of employment. So that is a big question. Also for Sri Lanka, I think one of the biggest challenges is that foreign indebtedness, like the money they're taking from China for infrastructural development and how they would repay those money back. For Pakistan as well, one of the biggest challenges for the China-Pakistan economic corridor, huge pressure on the balance of payment. How do we really encounter these challenges? So is it something, the number we look at, whether the country is growing at 6 or 7%, or we also ask questions whether these numbers really make some sense in terms of employment creation and in terms of job creation and employment creation. Maybe these things we can actually carry on our discussion in the next session around the SDGs and also the demographic dividend. But I thought that maybe if some of you can actually respond to these things more briefly. So anyone interested in saying something more? Ravi, you have anything from Sri Lanka? Or you claim yourself non-partisan, no? Sound like World Bank, it's a global person. You can use your microphone.
I guess from a Sri Lankan perspective, I think my vision for Sri Lanka, I think it has to be a transformational story, and the way I see it is finding their niche in the region, and so trying to be sort of a Hong Kong for the region, and so for those kinds of things, I think they have to make the necessary investments. So not only sort of internal infrastructure and stuff, but if they're going to be like this hub, then logistics hub, then we have to make investments in sort of security consistent trade facilitation. So I might not recommend it to every single country in South Asia, but if this is the sort of scenario that you're going in, then these kinds of investments have to be made. If you don't, then you get things that would actually derail the whole strategy, because then you'll get lots of drugs coming in and it'll have social implications and people will think this is a bad strategy, right? But so if you want to do it, then you're still going to need much more money to also, actually keep going on the investments instead of, putting capital investments to zero and being fiscally responsible. But, with that for further growth.
Thank you. Yes, please. Sure. And you have also a question on the jobless growth.
That's your question, which I might answer in the next session more. These are the European thing which you mentioned. It's very important in a way. This whole concept of integration and the growth through integration, this came from European Union. And all these textbook stories of customs union, this different stages, all were borrowed from what European Union did. But the lessons now which we want to follow is not European Union but ASEAN. And Europe is also learning from ASEAN. We learned from Russian story, as you know, in our old planned economy which India had for a long time. But now, practically, we are not learning much from the European story. Maybe we learn more how to disintegrate the customs union. That lessons will be important for us, maybe in future. But how they integrated and how the growth took place, this is not much of a discussion now in our region, as far as I understand. And on the jobless growth, very quickly, that's exactly what I pointed out. Sure. Equality. I mean, 90% of employment, I think in Bangladesh this is true, in Nepal this is true, in India this is true. 90% is unorganized. Now, unorganized is a catch-all term. Unorganized in terms of labor market, unorganized in terms of product market. They are two different ballgames. Labor market unorganized means you don't have any contracts, you don't have any retirement benefits. That's how the labor works there, most of them. We do not go by the decent work definition of World Bank and others. Whether obviously we like it, but the story in South Asia is something different. And the product market informality is also there. I mean, that's the biggest challenge which Martin mentioned, the GST. Some of these states which are heavily burdened by this unorganized sector are very skeptical about that the buck will stop somewhere. After all, it's a chain. The GST is a chain. And if the buck stops somewhere, because you have more gains in not revealing things than revealing, that happens in case of VAT also. And when you are moving to GST, this will appear also. Obviously, this will be more attractive to come out of the unorganized nature of product market to organized nature. But there are serious works done, and in fact, I should not say serious work. The serious questions were raised. Less serious work is done on that, but that is needed. Because GST is something which India is pursuing. No other South Asian country has gone into that. So that's an important lesson for the whole of South Asia. What will happen to this? Because it's a chain story. GST will only succeed if the unorganized sector actually turns in product market to more formalized in nature. Otherwise, things have to be careful.
Very rightly pointed out. Actually, we are having Bangladesh having the same problem implementing the new VAT law. Like because of the huge unorganized sector or informal sector, how do you really can implement in the absence of proper tax infrastructure? What I mentioned that with a proper accounting system. So that's a big challenge, of course, and that has a big implication for the further growth acceleration. Can we hear anything on Pakistan? Maria, would like to say a few words? This is a very gloomy picture for Pakistan growth, or what do you think? That actually no, because Martin was referring to something very important. Pakistan was once marked as a very high growth performing country, and also being as a kind of model country. But then, what happened in the next, in recent time? Can you use a mic?
Yeah, so I think
One yes.
Is it working now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, let's speak up. Yes.
Yes. I'm all for not painting a doomsday scenario, and I'm all for optimism. I think we've had our fair share of growth and then also declining growth, and a lot has been said about political instability. And I think that's one thing that I want to maybe stress on, and I think that's something which our colleague also mentioned earlier, which was about how important democracy is for sustained economic growth. And I think the period that you have referred to, the period where Pakistan was, I think, making a lot of rapid improvement in terms of its growth, was a period associated with dictatorship. So this was, under Musharraf's time when we, did not really have a democracy in place, but then that worked for the challenges which we were facing at that point. So I think it's a conversation about having more stable institutions in place, which are not really dependent on whether it's a democracy or whether it's a dictatorship, but then those autonomous institutions which have the power to withstand all these shocks are what's I think would be the most important priority for Pakistan, and that's something which we have really struggled with in the past, and I think we're still struggling with that. So these would be my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mary. I think this is very, very useful. Can we hear two more voices from Nepal? If Sarita, if you feel that you can say something, because Martin was saying something very interesting, that Nepal's growth rate, despite the fact that we compare to other South Asians, is very low, but he was saying that post-war situation and the post-crisis is not that bad. What do you think?
In case of Nepal, on the way from crisis to disaster, in 2016 we had a very low growth rate, almost 0.8%. But in 2017, ADB has estimated that we'll have a growth rate of 5.2 to 6.7. So I think it's really something good to talk about. And of course, this year we may have the growth rate that's even the highest growth rate for the Nepal, maybe 7.5. That has been estimated by the World Bank as well. And I would like to highlight some of the facts Salim will talk about the migration in Nepal and the informal economy, that's informal labor market. I agree that we are still talking, is the migration sunrise or sunset for Nepal in the long run? If we go to, if you look at the short run, so migration had done very good implication in the economy, right? They have very good investment in education, living standard of the people, reduction in poverty, even the health sector. But when it comes to long run, the remittance that come from migrants has been invested more on the luxury things and the living standard only, but there is no job creation activities done from the migration things. And recently we have noticing like Nepal has considered as a country that supply labor to the Gulf country and even sometimes to Europe and Australia. When it comes to the informal labor market, the biggest labor consuming sectors like construction sector and some garment sector has been lacking the labor in Nepal, and they have been hiring the labor from India and Bangladesh. So we still have to look more over what is the factor. We have been sending labor in the construction sector in Gulf country, and we have been lacking the same labor in Nepal. So labor gap is also another biggest issues in Nepal. And the informal economy, especially the hundi, migrants sending the money from hundi, and people, the very complicated government policies to send money from Nepal to the what do you call it? I lost my language. The country we are doing business like China, Bangladesh, India, Nepal have a very complicated policy to send money from there. So it has been another issues to the business person as well. So informal sector has been increasing because of the complicated financial policies as well.
Excellent point. I think Robert, when you extend your analysis, I think that's something very important, because one of the major drivers in South Asia's growth is remittance, migration. How they are, because we focused largely on the export, which is very well justified. But the remittance one and the kind of the recent challenges, because falling remittance, Bangladesh is is just simply almost 1/5 of the growth, remittance actually, the growth rate has fallen. It's fallen. Similarly, probably for Nepal, there is emerging challenges. Afghanistan, I think you can, please, or just say something as this.
Okay, so when it comes to Afghanistan, of course, there are many problems. There much data won't be available to use, but also we can't, like in our research or doing whatever in our region, we can't just eliminate Afghanistan, because if we eliminate Afghanistan, okay, the economy there will be bad, but also it affects Pakistan, India, all our neighboring countries. But there's a plus point about Afghanistan. So the location of Afghanistan is like, it's just perfect, because it connects energy-rich Central Asia to energy-deficient South Asia. That's like, that could be used like in a regional integration, and South Asian countries, can all, including of course Afghanistan, can all benefit from the location of Afghanistan as transit hub between these two Asian regions.
Excellent. I think we have heard the voices from South Asia, and actually, if we want to, is there anyone who can raise some point, want to make any final comment? Rick, you want to say something?
Well, I'll be chairing the next one, so I'll save my really good points for that.
Okay, keep those points. But I don't really want to summarize because I thought that it was a very, very excellent session. You know, we heard so many new issues, new ideas, and I think these are very useful for the research we'd like to conduct in the coming days. With this, I'd like to thank you all, and then we'll have a tea break until 11:30. We are 15 minutes behind, don't worry. We'll catch it up during the lunch break. Thank you once again.